All right. How's everyone doing today? This evening, rather. See, we got a couple people in the room already, so welcome everyone who's here live. And thank you to everybody who's watching after the fact on the replay. I am going to do some stuff today inside of Adobe Animate, and I'm going to go through the whole process of, creating some assets and bringing in some audio, and then having Adobe Sensei generate keyframes based on that audio to create lip sync. So what we got to do first is to go in, and I'm going to create a new document here. So I don't need full HD. I'm just going to do standard HD. And this is going to create a 640 by 480 document here, which I'm going to change the background of. That looks pretty good. I'm also going to go ahead and save this, just in case anything happens during the stream. All right. Let's see how everything's going over here. I like to keep an eye on everything. Looking good. All right. So what we're going to do is, the first thing I'm going to do is create some sort of a background for this thing. And once I have that, I'll draw out a turnip, because we're going to make a turnip talk. I was trying to think of something to give some voice to, and a turnip happened to be the thing that I settled on. So that's what we're going to do. I'm going to fit my stage in window here, and that allows me to change my timeline as much as I want in terms of the height, so I can see all my layers. And this stage just sort of adapts to that. So that's great. Let's see here. What I'm going to use to do all my drawing tonight is the fluid brush tool. So the fluid brush is a new brush type inside of Animate for about a year. I think this came out last year around Adobe Max. So with the fluid brush tool selected, I can go ahead and actually create some sort of color here. Let's make that brown. I'm going to bring up the size. And yeah, you've got all these different options with the brush. And I have both velocity and pressure options because I'm using a stylus and a tablet for this drawing exercise here. And gosh, let's just see how it looks. Great. Something that people don't really know about the fluid brush is that it actually uses the same technology as Adobe Fresco does, which is pretty cool. All right. Clip everything outside the stage, so I just see this kind of background here. I'm going to rename layer 1 to BG for background, which is going to be a static background. I'm going to create a new layer, call that turnip. There we go. And this is the layer I'm actually going to draw my turnip on. So for a turnip, I don't like turnips. Even though I'm a vegetarian, so I don't eat any meat or anything like that. But turnips just, they're not my thing, right? I don't like them. But they're fine to draw, and they're fine to bring some life to, right? So I'm going to switch back over to my tool properties here and pull down that size a bit. One thing I do wish we had inside of Animate, I wish it would give you a preview of how big your brush is. I know there's a lot of these different controls down here that kind of, influence the size of it, but to have some idea rather than the cursor would be nice. However, I'm going to start off with white, and I'm going to go into my color wheel and make it a bit off-white. And turnips, if you've ever seen one in the wild, are kind of white and purple. So I'm going to create the background of the turnip right now. And usually they start out, well, let's just create the bulb. So I'm using my fluid brush to just create the main body of the turnip. Then he usually has a scraggly little root like this. Again, using that fluid brush to just kind of sketch him out here. All right. And at this point, we need to add in some of that purple. So I'm going to increase that. And just bring some of that purple into it here too. Usually the top is purple and the bottom is white on a turnip. Oh my gosh. I'm not even intentionally making it look like hair, but it kind of looks like hair, which is super weird. But I'm going with it because we're going to make it talk. So I guess it kind of makes sense if it's a little more anthropomorphic, right? All right. So there's our basic turnip. I'm going to go ahead and save this. And what I need to do now is to actually take my turnip and create a graphic symbol out of the turnip. So to do that, I'm going to use my selection tool and just draw a selection rectangle around all the components of the turnip that I just drew. And this is going to only select the turnip bits because I have my background layer locked. And with that done, we can create a symbol out of our selected shape data. All right. So when you have something selected like this, there's a little shortcut usually to convert it to a symbol. So I'm going to go ahead and choose that, but you could also choose modify, convert to symbol right here. And it's going to do the same exact thing no matter what. It's going to bring up the convert to symbol dialog. From here, we can choose the type of graphic, whether it's a movie clip symbol, a button symbol, or a graphic symbol. We want to choose graphic because we want to use automated lip sync with this. So I just need to give this a name. And this is the name of the symbol that appears in our document library. So once I hit OK, you can see the appearance changes here. We can see it's a graphic symbol instance of turnip. To actually see turnip, we can go to our library. And because I have the clip content outside the stage stuff off, we're not going to be able to see the whole turnip. There's a little bug there with that. That's existed for a little bit now. So if I double click on this, we can go right inside the turnip itself, as we can see right here. We can also go back to the root timeline, and I can double click on the instance of the turnip in order to edit it in place. Hi, Lisa. I'm playing with turnips. So as you can see, the graphic symbol has its own timeline here. I'm going to go ahead and give this a new name. I'm going to call this one turnip 2. And for this turnip, this is going to be my turnip background, really. So I'm going to call this turnip BG. Oh, and if you are using advanced layers mode, it doesn't allow spaces inside of names. So you can see here, it warns me and it puts a little underscore in there in place of the space. And that's absolutely fine. So for this background image, I'm not going to change that at all. So I'm going to lock it down. But I am going to add a new layer for the turnip's face. And the face is going to be kind of the bulk of what we're going to be looking at here, because we're going to have create a bunch of visemes, so different mouth symbols for different yeah, different sort of mouth forms for forming different, vocalizations for words and things like that. And we'll give him some eyes too, because we're not cruel, right? Yeah, it does look human. So when I was sketching him out a little bit ago, I was adding purple to his top, and it kind of started coming out like hair. So because of that, I just sort of went with it, and now we have a turnip that looks like it has hair on top, which I thought kind of made sense. So just went with it. I'm gonna go in a little bit more, maybe not 200%, but 140 maybe, so we can focus on this facial area here. And if you go and do a search for Vizimes, you can find a whole bunch of different little charts that show you, traditional sort of mouth positions for teeth and mouth and tongue and lips and all sorts of stuff for different sounds. So you got your O sound, your E sound, your Ah sound, all this stuff here. And I'm going to go ahead and use this one right here to sort of figure out, right, to draw in all of these different types here. And the best way to do this is, if you're using the automated lip sync inside of Animate, is to actually label these things so you can remember what they are. So I'm going to create another layer on top of the face layer just called labels. And that's going to contain any of my labels. This first one here, you can see in my frame properties, is going to be neutral. So I'm going to put a label of neutral right there. And then if we look down here, we get a little tiny flag. And actually, I can make this a bit bigger. So you can see the actual text right there, neutral for that specific keyframe. And we're going to do that across all these different pieces here. So the first thing we can do is just go ahead and just, spec out all the different sounds we're going to need for our mouth positions. So we've got, let's see, checking my reference here that I just showed. There we go. So we're going to have like this guy here. He's going to be a new keyframe, and I'm going to call him Ah. Then we're going to have this guy here. This is going to be, actually, I don't like that graph very much. I should choose a different one. And one of the nice things is, like, anything that you do for Character Animator, which is, of course, a different product from Adobe from Animate, they both use the same set of Vizimes. So you could actually like import from Illustrator or Photoshop any of those mouth parts from a Photoshop or Illustrator document that you'd be using inside of Character Animator for Animate, and it would still work. Of course, tonight I want them to look really turnipy, so I am creating them as a turnip. And actually, you can see here, if we go back out to scene 1 and select this, since it is a graphic symbol, if I go down my looping section in the properties panel and go to lip syncing, which is where we're going to end up, you can see all the different Vizimes through the Vizime chart here. So we've got D, E, F, L, M, O, R. Then we have S, and W. So these are the ones that we can do inside of Adobe Animate. And that's what we're setting up. We're kind of just like framing stuff right now. So we got Ah. The next one is going to be D. We're going to have E, we're going to have F. And it doesn't really matter actually what you name these things. This is only for identification, because when you set up the Vizime before you apply your audio, you're going to be able to map all these different frames to that chart that I just showed. So let's go in here. After F, we got L. And then we have M. We have O. R. S. Almost done. We have and finally, the last one is going to be, woo. And I got an extra one in here. We can just right click on that and choose to clear keyframe. And then he's gone. Oops, let's remove the frame too, just to clean it up nice. All right, so of course we don't have anything that's really mapped to any of this stuff yet. We don't have anything except for what we have in the initial frame here. So we want to extend the background all the way out across all our different frames. So we're going to insert a new frame span, and there we go. And now comes the actual fun part where we can start drawing out the different mouth shapes. So again, I am going to use the fluid brush right here. This is what we use to draw out our turnip. It is a GPU accelerated brush. And again, it works on the same technology as the vector brushes inside of Adobe Fresco. So, and if you've never used Fresco before, Fresco is really, really nice. I use it all the time. I used to do lots of watercolor and acrylics and things like that. And Fresco makes it pretty true to life. All right. So the eyes are probably going to be shared across. That's a little weird. I'm going to undo that. I got to take this tapering down here. It's a little too much. Let's see. Make it a little rounder. And a little smaller. That's better. Oh, it's good that he doesn't look creepy at all. Let's give him some, kind of some bags under his eyes too. There we go. Looking real good, turnip. All right. So there's his eyes. And the next thing I need to do is start creating his mouth. So I'm going to take the size down even more and the taper down even more. We don't really need that taper there. And again, you could use any kind of brush for this. I just happen to be using the fluid brush because it has all these different options. And I decided to use my stylus and tablet tonight. It's an Intuos 4. So it's an older version of Wacom's tablet technology, but it's still pretty nice. All right, so the first thing we need is a neutral smile or neutral mouth for this, right? So let's try to do that. Oh, there we go. That looks really great. Really wonderful. Hey, Hannah, how are you this evening? Thanks for joining. And actually, I just selected this, but I just drew that out, but I want it a little darker. I want it that same color. This is one of the things I love about Animate when you're drawing stuff, is that whenever you go into the color chooser, you automatically get thrown into the eyedropper. So I can just choose that color right there. That's exactly what I want, right? It's something I wish other applications would adopt, because it's just so convenient. If you're going to the color picker, you know, and then you hover over anything else on your document, of course you want to sample from that. So this is one thing that Animate does very, very cleverly that I wish other things would do. All right, so there's our neutral expression. He's looking real dour right now. But what we're going to do is duplicate this keyframe. And that's going to duplicate everything. So the next thing we need to do is create the mouth movement. So for that, let's see here. I am going to just deselect everything there. And I'm just using the selection tool to sort of modify what this looks like. So with the selection tool inside of Animate, you can actually just hover over any paths and you can bend the paths. So I didn't even have to draw anything else. He goes from neutral to Wow, he's looking messed up. All right, let's go to the next one. This one is D. And checking my reference here. D is going to be a little more. And see, the thing is, like, a lot of these, this is going to be a really messed up Vizime that I create because it's a turnip, right? So if you look at any traditional Vizime, you know, you've got the tongue, you've got teeth, and the lips going on to all create an expression. With this guy, I don't know. He's a turnip. Does he have teeth? I don't think so. So what we're going to do is go in and do the E expression, which is sort of a little more like this. And if he had teeth, of course, they could be showing here. And as we go through each of these too, since the, oops, that's messed up. So since the eyes are, you know, all on the same layer, we can actually change them with every one of these expressions. So if we wanted the turnip to close its eyes at some point, like maybe when doing the O noise, right, down here, we could definitely do that. So F, and F looks more like sort of a, just a weird like pursed lip kind of thing. I love how weird he looks. I love that. That is great. Let's zoom in a little more, actually. Let's go to 200% here. I think that's good for F. All right, next one is L. And L traditionally has a tongue. That's definitely visible. So I don't know. he's the poster child for this year. Exactly. Yes. None of us are doing good. He's definitely not doing very good. Let's put his little tongue in there. He's got a sad little tongue. That's pretty good. All right, M. So here we've got a couple of things to deal with. And one of those things, and here's something about Animate, right? If you have shapes that overlap, you delete one of those shapes and look what happens, right? It actually cuts into other shapes. And, you know, this is how it's behaved for, 20 years or whatever. But it's something to definitely be aware of. Something you can do to avoid this is to create a drawing object like this. When something is a drawing object, what you can do is it'll just sort of like preserve itself as you go through here. But what I am going to do is just kind of start over with his M face here. So M is usually like, right? That looks pretty And it's definitely like shifted up in his face too. All right, let's go to O. So you can see like this doesn't take that long if you are drawing out your own mouth parts for one of these. But you could always repurpose, as I mentioned before, some other mouth parts that are fully fleshed out in a style that you like from like a character animator puppet or something else that you'd be using. These things are pretty standard. So this is the O. So as mentioned before, we're actually going to close his eyes for this. But first, there we go. His little O face there. And let's go ahead and just completely remove his eyes. And we'll add back in, since his eyes are closed, just a little bit of that, right? Yeah. Pretty good. All right, next is R, which is weird. Like, you don't think of R being what it is. And I do want to take his eyes back. So I'm going to remove these eyes, pop over to these eyes, copy, and paste in place. And there we go. He's got his eyes back now. That's pretty good. Gosh. Yeah, he's looking real great. So R is a bit different from O in that it's sort of got this other bit to it here. So it's not exactly the same sort of thing. I'm going to add a little bit of tongue there as well. Something like that. And the funny thing is too, like, this is going to go by so fast as he's actually speaking that you don't have to spend like a ton of time on it anyway. It really does depend on, you know, the level of detail you're going for. Obviously, this is not a ton of detail here. We've got a turnip who has a, you know, turnipy face, and he's got his turnipy hair, and he just is what he is, you know. He's not meant to be like super realistic. All right, next one here is S. So S, you usually have your teeth together. He's a turnip, he doesn't have teeth. So we'll do the best we can. And let's change that color out again. I kind of wonder if making his mouth a bit longer like this would kind of go for that S sound. Because you do sort of, you know, pull back like that. So look, it looks like he's talking already. It's perfect. All right, there's S. So we also have and woo. So let's get in our here. And for we've already got the good color. And I think I'll grab some color for a tongue once again, just a little flash of tongue for this one. Perfect. And finally, we have woo, which, as you might imagine, looks a bit surprised. And maybe what I'll do is actually enlarge his eyes for this. So I'll use the free transform tool. Just make his eyes a bit bigger for woo. And woo is just a very kind of exaggerated kind of look like this. You know, I could take the curve smoothing and the stabilizer up a bit here too. Ugh. Start over. There we go. He's great. All right. So if I go back out, fit in window, we've got a number of different mouth styles for each of the different noises that he might make. We've even changed his eyes a little bit here and there. Gosh, back out into scene 1. So one of the cool things about having the head and the hair and things like that inside of the actual graphic symbol that you're going to use to do the lip syncing on is that you can actually animate that separately from the lip sync. So if I wanted to, I could go ahead and do that right now. However, what I'm really thinking about doing is giving him a little stock, because generally when you're dealing with stuff like this, and I'm just going to make this a different layer altogether, what you're going to have is a turnip usually has like a stalk coming out of it, right? Because it is a root vegetable. So I'm going to give him a little kind of tuft here. And then a bit of a stalk. We'll just give this a little bit of a difference in color, just to give it some more dimension. Yeah. Yeah, that's fine. Great. Okay. So let's check up on stuff here. Right on. All right. So let's see, 7:30. So we're about 30 minutes into this. And we've already got our graphics assembled. Of course, we don't have any animation yet. But that's going to come next. So the first thing we're going to do is go ahead and figure out what we want to do with this little guy. Let's fit in window. Gosh, I don't know how long to make this quite yet. So what we can use as a guide is the audio that we're going to be using to do the automated lip sync. So for the audio, I've already prepared a little bit of audio inside of Adobe Audition. And if we want to preview this, what I did is I said some lines that a turnip would say, and I pitch shifted a little bit and added some additional effects to it.
I'm a little turnip. I don't taste very good. Even most vegetarians won't eat me. Ah well.
So I've exported that to an MP3 file, and I'm going to use that inside of Adobe Animate. So let's pop back into Animate. And if I open up my library, here I got my turnip. I am going to go and drag my little turnip MP3 file directly into the library. This is going to bring it in as turnip.mp3.
I'm a little turnip. I don't taste very good.
And we've got the very honest turnip right there. Thank goodness. And what I'm going to do is create a new layer in my main timeline for audio. So we can call it sound, audio, voice, whatever we want. And for this, I just need to drag that in there. So I could drag it onto the sound layer if I wanted to, or inside the properties panel here. If I have a keyframe selected inside my sound layer, notice I have a sound property here, and I can choose anything that's in my library. So I'm going to choose turnip.mp3. And when you're doing automated lip sync, or really any kind of lip sync inside of Animate or any other program, what you're going to want to do is make sure inside of Animate that it is stream event type, sync type right here. Event and start, what they both do is they just kind of start the audio file, and then it just runs independent of the timeline. When you choose stream, what Animate will do is it will keep it in synchronization with anything that's going on in the timeline. So it's super important for lip syncing and things that need to be synchronized, right? So I'm going to choose stream for that. And if I go ahead and go out to 1 second, add in my frames, I can see here that we've got a little waveform. And let's go back to Audition. And we can see here that we've got about 10 seconds. So that's pretty good. So let's go and add in 10 seconds of frame span inside of our Animate project. Select all those, add my frames, and there we go. We've got our waveform. And if I scrub, you can kind of hear the audio. Although, even though you see the lips moving on our turnip, he's not really syncing with the audio yet. The mouth shapes are not lining up whatsoever with what's going on inside of the audio. So there's a couple ways to do that. The old way of doing it used to be to, go onto the graphic symbol. And what you would do is you'd basically go into your frame picker and you would choose okay, this sound at this point sounds like, this face here. And you could click that and it's going to insert a keyframe and put that particular mouth on there. However, we're using automatic lip syncing here, so we don't have to do any of that rubbish, right? So what I'm going to do is hit lip syncing with my little turnip selected. And we get this little chart that we saw before. This is how we set up our vizimes in order to enable the automated lip syncing with Adobe Sensei. So our neutral is actually correct. And notice for each of these, what this is showing me is each individual frame that we just created inside of our graphic symbol. So for ah, because I labeled it ah on frame 2, I know that's what belongs there, right? For d, there's that. For E, for F, for L, M, there's O, R, S, and woo. So look at that. They're all lined up. That's perfect. I can now go ahead and choose my particular audio layer that has sound in it. So this is what I want to perform the lip sync against. I want to use the data that Sensei gives me from the sound layer when it goes up to the AI servers and processes it through all of Adobe's machine learning and then brings it back down. It'll then populate my Animate timeline with keyframes that point to these specific mouth movements. So I'm going to go ahead and hit done there with that selected. And you can see it's creating the lip sync. And that was really nice and quick, right? So let's collapse this a bit, we can actually see over here, especially if I take this down a bit, you can see all the different keyframes that it's created in line with the different audio pieces. So let's go ahead and play this back and see exactly, how well Adobe Sensei did in figuring out which mouth parts belong with which audio, right?
I'm a little turnip. I don't taste very good. Even most vegetarians won't eat me. Ah well.
That was really good. That really pleases me.
I'm a little turnip. I don't taste very good. Even most vegetarians won't eat me.
That's perfect. That's great. But if I wanted to, of course, I could shift these keyframes around. I could go in and, apply on this object a specific, another, like if I went in here from my frame picker, I could be like, well, it's set to neutral right now, but really I think it should be this one. I could do that. I could override it after I get the data back from Sensei. But that works out pretty good. So that is great. Let's see what time it is. 7:40. Okay. So I'm trying to think of what else I might want to do to this thing. One thing I might want to do is actually animate the head a little more. And right now, because I have these different keyframes here. Yeah, Lisa, I won't eat them either. They're gross. They're gross. Nobody wants to eat turnips. Actually, if I remember right, I think my father likes turnips. Now I kind of feel bad about doing this. Well, he's not going to see this. So, all right. So we're left with sort of a problem here because we want to shift the turnip back and forth as he talks, maybe. And Hannah, you enjoy turnips? I can send you this turnip when I'm finished with it. I'll send it to you. And you can make something with him. He's so sad. All right. So, so we got these keyframes in here already, right? So, it's a problem because if we change how he moves across the stage here, what we're going to do is, that's a great segue. Lisa mentions that Hannah can cook up the turnips in her stream next week. And since hers is a bit cooking themed, that actually makes a lot of sense. All right. So, turnip. We're having too much fun. What I'm going to want to do is actually take this entire layer and all the animation in it, and I want to convert this into another symbol type so I can animate it. So what I'm going to do is right-click on that with all of it selected. And I'm going to choose to, I could do a couple things. I could copy the frames, cut the frames. Notice on the layer as well, I can choose that layer and say I want to cut my layer. And that's what I obviously just did. Create a new one here. Turnip. So all of that layer data is on my clipboard right now. And what I want to do is go into my library, and way down here at the bottom, they don't make it obvious, right? Way down here at the bottom, there's this little tiny thing to create a new symbol. And I want to call this animated turnip, because we already have a symbol with the name of turnip, and we can make it a graphic symbol. That's fine. And then we have our new symbol. We're inside of animated turnip, and we have an empty layer, but I can right click on that layer and say paste layers. And then what do we have? We've got our little turnip with all of his speech intact, right? And if we wanted to, we could even copy the sound over there, but I'm not going to do it for this. What I am going to do is choose the initial keyframe on my turnip layer, and I want to bring animated turnip into there. Somewhere around the middle, it's fine. Let's make sure to fit in window again. All right, so now we've got our animated turnip, and if I double click inside of there, we've got our turnip, and it's got all the different little mouth parts moving, right? So because this is a graphic symbol, it's going to be completely in line with everything that I've already set up.
I don't taste very good. Even most vegetarians won't eat me.
It's true. All right. So if I want to just he's just staring straight ahead and everything. We want to give him a little bit more movement and, a little bit more animation here. So what I'm going to do for this, there's a number of different ways to do it, right? Inside of Animate, it's a 20 plus year old program. So it's got like 10 different ways to do the same thing, like a lot of other applications, right? So what I'm going to do is just right click anywhere in this frame span and choose to create a motion tween. Because with that motion tween created, I can now use my free transform tool to just shift them around a little bit here and there. Let's go up 50% so I can see this transform box. And obviously I drew something like over here inside of him. This is why the transform box is so big. But what I'm going to do first of all, you see this little white thing here? This is the transform point. So any transforms that I do are going to be around that point. So I'm going to take that down to his neck right there. And when I do that, now when I rotate him with the free transform tool, it transforms around that point, right? And as I go ahead and figure out how I want to move him around. So let's go ahead and actually just insert a keyframe right here, just so that it stays the same right there. And over here, we'll just move him ever so slightly.
I'm a little turnip.
We'll stick another one right there, manually. And then shift him a little bit more here. And of course, you can apply all sorts of additional stuff to him. You can skew him, right? So if you wanted to be weird with him, you could do that. And that sometimes adds a little more to it.
I don't taste very good.
You could also make him a little bit bigger. So when he says, I don't taste very good.
Taste very good.
He means
Even
it.
most vegetarians won't eat me.
All right. Let's shift him out here. I'm going to scale him back down a little bit. Rotate him a little.
Even most vegetarians won't eat me. Ah, well.
Ah, well. There he is. Okay. So that is pretty much what I was thinking of doing for this. Let's go ahead and actually, let's actually play him back. So I'm going to hit test movie here. It's going to render him inside of Animate for me.
I'm a little turnip. I don't taste very good. Even most vegetarians won't eat me. Ah, well.
Ah, well.
I'm a...
All right. So if I wanted to, I could go ahead and choose File, Export, and I can export video media. And using this, I can export this as a video file using Adobe Media Encoder. So you can see here, we can choose our format and also our presets directly from Adobe Media Encoder in order to do that. Once I hit export, it's going to go ahead and export this whole thing for me. And hand it over to Media Encoder. Sometimes Media Encoder takes a little bit to wake up from his nap. You've also got this new option here. So this is new since June. Oh, here's Media Encoder coming up. Oh, and he's done already. So we can see here, it just went through and it rendered that little fellow for me. And now we have this nice little MP4 file from Animate that we can use wherever we want. And Animate lets us know that, hey, the file turnip.mp4 has been successfully created. But as I was saying, we could also go ahead and use the quick share option. And this was introduced in the June release. And notice that a lot of stuff is blanked out right now. And that's because right now you can only share to Twitter. So if I share this to Twitter, I'm signed into Twitter too through Animate. And I could put a little description of the tweet in there, share it, and it's going to put it out on my Twitter feed. But I could also use that MP4 I created. In future versions of Animate, there are going to be a lot more options right here for sharing and publishing to social media channels and things like that. And even just like quick exports and things. So that's why this is grayed out right now, because it's not active yet. All right. So that was a fun stream. I see there's still some people on here. So hey everyone. I guess before we leave, this is pretty much the completion of my turnip. I'm fairly pleased with him. He does look very sad, but that's okay because we're all a little under the weather this year, right? We should get a hashtag around this, like 2020 turnip or something. Right. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to sign off and stop the stream. However, those who showed up live, thank you for showing up. And those of you who are watching the recording, thank you for spending your time and watching the recording as well. Next week, I actually plan on doing something a little bit different. At this same time, I'm going to be doing a little discussion with someone. So it's going to be a discussion around teaching and learning and, different tools you can use and different methodologies and, just our different experiences when having to pivot during the spring, when everything kind of blew up and everything, and what we're doing now and so forth. So I guess it's a more education-focused session next week and less bizarre talking turnip kind of thing. So just trying different things out as we go along. And I don't know, I might try a different time too. This time doesn't seem to be super, super active. I know I get a lot of people on replays, but it'd be great to have more people live as well, especially for the chat. Thank you, Lisa and Hannah, for showing up and chatting with me. I appreciate it. And I hope everyone has a nice evening, or, if you're somewhere where it's morning or in the middle of the night or in the afternoon, likewise. All right. Thanks all.